All right, this is a continuation of my why you're not getting long flakes video. There's 4 more reasons. Okay? Now these are just my opinions according to my experience. And these are specifically to answer the questions on long flakes. So some of the things that come up pertain to all flakes. Like you guys are reminding me of different things that can interfere with flakes. That's perfectly fine. But I was trying to address specifically long flakes. But I'll address the other stuff too in this video. So just hold on. All right. Support is not good. Now, what kind of support is needed for long flakes? There's 2 types, 2 principal types of support. One is support on the opposite side of where you want the long flake to be, which means you back up your workpiece to something opposite where you're hitting so that it'll absorb, so that, not absorb, so that it will resist the strike. So it's not going to move too much. That's one aspect of support. The other support is support above and touching the flake as it travels. Now, there's 2 types of that kind of support: hard support and soft support. Hard support is like on a hard pad. Soft support is like in a rolled up wad of, let's say, buckskin or spongy material like thick buckskin or thick moose hide or some kind of thick but relatively firm support. All right. Hard support would be like napping on a piece of wood as a backing. Okay. So soft support is good for some people. I don't have much success with it because I end up snapping the point on the soft support. But for some people, it works well. Okay, so support is an important issue with the long flakes. It's important with every flake, but I'm trying to address issues that come up particularly with long flakes. Okay. The shape of the tooltip is important. And yeah, it's important with long flakes. Some people, in order to get long flakes, have to have a special shape of the tooltip, either really sharp, really dull, flat, or angled. I've seen knappers use all sorts of different shapes on the tooltips in order to get long flakes, and that's the only way they're able to do it. But there's different ways that different knappers find to do this, so it depends on you. Okay. And that leads to number 3. So the first one was support. Next one is the shape of the tooltip. Number 3 is what is proper for you in making long flakes. Now, when I assume that, when I am discussing the long flake thing, I'm assuming that you're doing everything else correct, and it's a mystery why the flakes are not long. Like you've got proper braiding, you've got proper path for the flake, it's convex, it's a ridge, it's good material, you've abraded properly. Did I say that already? You're at the proper center line, you've got the forces and angles seemingly correct, and all that everything is correct, but you're just not getting the long flakes. All right? For you, in order for me to tell you how to get long flakes, I've got to watch you. And advice for you is going to be different for somebody else. Your technique for generating long flakes is going to be slightly different from other people's techniques for generating long flakes. Now, if you get together thousands of knappers, you're going to find common ground. Most of the time, knappers are going to be using a very particular, how should I say, a very particular approach, and it'll be on the contrived side of knapping to developing these long flakes. They're going to set up everything in advance so that the initial conditions are proper for their style. Okay? Some people use very heavy pressure with jigs to obtain the long flakes. Some people use vertical indirect percussion. Some people use horizontal indirect percussion. Some people use direct percussion for their particular type of long flakes that they want. Okay? The ones that are using indirect percussion, what I see with long flakes is very few nappers that I see that can get long, narrow flakes with indirect percussion, because it takes time to practice. In a few more years, I'll probably be seeing a lot more long, narrow flakes with indirect percussion as people get used to, and as I get used to trying to make long flakes with a horizontal punch, or indirect percussion, or indirect as it's commonly shortened to. All right, so whatever's proper for you, that's number 3. Now, number 4 is, how should I say? It reminds me of an example. Like I just asked Grok this morning, what are the top 10 most common questions that Grok gets asked? Okay. Number 1, what is Grok? Okay. Now, if you're able to find Grok and actually ask it a question, you've had to sign in on it, first of all. So you know that Grok is an app of some sort. And it's artificial intelligence. Maybe you do, maybe you don't know that. But you know what it is because you're signed into it. It's a computer thing. It's an internet thing. It's a phone thing. You can type in stuff and ask it a question because you're obviously typing it in and asking a question. So, I mean, they say there's no such thing as a stupid question, but that's pretty close. Number 2 is even closer to being a stupid question. Number 2 was, how do I access Grok and what can it do? Okay. Or how do I get it to do something? Or something like that, right? How do I access Grok and how do I use it? There it is. How do I use it? How do I access it and how do I use it? That was the question. Again, if you're typing in that question and hitting the return button or whatever the button is on your computer or phone is to get it to respond, you already know the answer to these 2 questions. Basically, right? You don't know the intimate details. Now, it could be that Grok is paraphrasing and these are not the actual questions. But the first 2 questions answered themselves, or the people that are actually asking it already know the answer. Okay. Now, this is something to do with number 4 on this list. That's why I didn't mention them before, because you already know these things that I'm going to say now are going to interfere with long flakes. You already know. But in the interest of answering questions, I will go over it. And I'm going to classify number 4 as you're not getting long flakes because of stupid napping. Okay, what is stupid napping? I mentioned this in some of my videos, right? Well, when I was talking about Native American artifacts, when it looks like they did something for no reason at all, or for a stupid reason, there is something called stupid napping, in my opinion. Okay, this is my channel, that's my opinion. All right, first thing is you're forgetting what direction you're supposed to hit. Like you're trying to hit in a certain direction and you lose track of what you're doing and you don't hit in the right direction. That's going to mess you up. You hit into a concavity. You're trying to flake into a concavity and thinking it's going to go down the hill and back up the hill. Flakes don't do that. They go down the hill and they stop. They fall into the ravine or they fall into the pit and they get trapped. A concavity is a trap for a flake. Everybody knows that once you start napping. Okay. Hitting into a step fracture. You might say, well, it's just a little step fracture. I can hit right into it. All right. Many times it'll get you into trouble. Now, obviously, this is obvious to most people. Also, so are all of these, but it's worth mentioning. So don't lose track of which direction you're supposed to hit. Don't hit into a concavity. Don't hit into a step fracture. Don't use too much inward force. Don't use too little inward force. Don't crush the edge by accident. Or don't crush the edge, period. Try not to take shortcuts or too many risks. Some people don't pay enough attention to the center line of the piece and where to place your tooltip on the edge above or below center or at center line. They're not paying attention to that aspect very well. Okay, now it's easier to drive longer flakes if you're lower, but not always, especially with certain material. If you're hitting low, it's just going to make a short flake. You need to get up a little higher so that there's some meat behind that initial meat in the tool stone at the point of impact, so it doesn't crush or it doesn't produce only a short flake. You need to have some meat in there to get it to pry off in that initial fraction of a second so that it can continue a lot better. All right. So you have to judge where you're going to hit on the center line. But this is obvious to most people, and it's obvious in all flaking types, not just the long ones. Okay. Not recognizing the proper path for the flake, which is pretty obvious. You missed it. You missed the opportunity for the long flake because you thought instead of being there, you thought it was this way. You're missing where it should go. But that pertains to all flakes. All right. And last but not least is you're staying away from napping for too long between napping sessions. You're just losing your groove or losing your zone or whatever. You're getting rusty every time in between napping sessions. So you're not at napping often enough, or there's too long of a period of time between napping sessions. You lose it. Now, so that distance or that time period between napping sessions is different for different people. Some people can go a very long time and not have an effect of getting rusty. Some people, if you just wait one day, like if you nap every other day, that one day in between messes them up, and they forget a lot of stuff in that one day in between the napping sessions that they're not napping. They lose their groove. Okay, so in some people it can be up to like a month. I think there's some guys that say I haven't napped in a long time. When was the last time? Maybe a month or two ago, and they start getting into it, and right away they get back in. There's no problem. But if you wait too long, that is one of those things that's, part of stupid napping. Okay. I'm sure there's more on the list. I might do a part 3. If you guys can find some other thing that I missed. Yeah, I probably missed some more stuff. But remember, this is pertaining to long flakes. Oh, I did forget one. And I'm going to put this under stupid napping because it pertains to all flakes, right? It is, I'm going to write this down. Not in contact with platform long enough. Okay, if you're not in contact with the platform or the striking area as the flake is being removed for a period of time that's long enough, you're not going to get a flake that is the length you want. And that includes short flakes too. If you're aware of how long you're in contact with the platform or the striking area, you can make short flakes by reducing the amount of contact you're making. And you can produce longer flakes by increasing the amount of contact you're making, or increasing the length of contact. How do you do this? How do you increase or decrease the length of contact on the striking area or the platform. There's various ways of doing that. Okay, most of it is subconscious, but for the most part, a softer tool grabs the edge a little bit better, and it's kind of spongy, so it maintains contact longer because it doesn't bounce off. You can also bounce off the edge with a soft tool as well. It just takes time to get used to doing these different things with the different tools. But for the most part, the softer the tool, the longer it stays in contact with the platform. A very hard material like hardened tempered steel bounces off, and very rarely can you get a long flake with that sort of thing, or any flake that looks like the kind of flake you want. So I think you get the idea there. So I did forget that one, but I'll put that in that big group at the end that pertains to all flakes. Okay? All right. I hope that helps. That's it.